The music is working.
Hey, Mr. Pondboss,
All right.
tell me how.
Holy cow, we might be able to do a show.
Mr. Pondboss, let's do it now. Hey, Mr. Pondboss,
Yeah.
you're the one that makes fishing so much fun. Well, I woke up this morning and
All right. Hey, everybody. Bob Lusk here, the Pond Boss, coming at you live, hanging out with Wayne and Josie Lancaster and my wife. So they're over here kind of to the side being quiet, which I don't know how that's going to work. We'll know in a minute. But good gosh, let's have a little fun. It's so good to kind of connect up with everybody. Hey, if you let me know you're here, and we'll start tackling some questions. In the meantime, looks like we got 4 viewers cranked up. That's good. That's a good start. And actually what I'm doing is I'm operating off the hot spot. Oh, Chris Blood says, hi, Debbie.
Hi, baby.
Oh, you heard that. And Michael Gray's checking in from Nashville, Tennessee. Good to see him. So what I thought I'd start off with is talking about drought. Jason Dodd, let's do this. Hey, buddy, I'm in. Lusk, go. That's what my trainer says. Lusk, go.
How cute.
So there's Tim Stewart checking in from Florida. I know all you guys. This is so fun. Good to see everybody. I thought I'd talk about droughts and floods. And part of what prompted that was I was talking to Wayne and Josie. And you guys will remember Wayne and Josie because they've been watching the show a long time. And Wayne, before he retired, was roaming around the country managing warehouses and things. And he and Josie would do their Wednesday night dates watching this show. What's wrong with you people? You know, and so here we are hanging at their house. There's Mike Cottrell. He's got a place in Palapena County. So, anyway, I thought what prompted the topic, you know, droughts and floods, is that Wayne and Josie's right behind me. You can kind of see it over my shoulder. It's getting dark. Maybe you can't. They've got a 5-acre lake right behind me. Well, a year and a half ago, actually, 6 months ago, it was empty. And they were in a serious drought. And one of my catchphrases, one of the things I tell people, is that every single drought ends with a flood. But not usually a flood of the proportions that they had. Back in October, there was a series of storms that just trained right over the top of them. They got about, 15 inches of rain? 15 inches of rain over what span of time?
2 days.
2 days. Topped their dam, filled the lake up, topped the dam, eroded the backside slope of the dam. The spillway couldn't handle it. Bosque River was completely douched. I mean, it washed that Bosque River, which is not even 2 miles from here. I've looked at that river in several places, upstream and downstream, and that thing is just completely scoured. Which rivers need that from time to time, but not that much, you know. And so, talking about droughts, one of the things that happened here is Wayne was able to, when the drought hit, the lake was empty enough that did it go dry?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, it went dry because of the drought. So he was able to get in there and deepen it and then create a bunch of habitat. There were a lot of shallow areas. So Wayne brought some heavy equipment in and he deepened it. He built a peninsula and he built an island, which was a real good way to spoil some dirt. You know, if you can add the shoreline, even if you give up a little bit of surface area by building a peninsula, and Michael Gray will chime in on this, I bet you. Michael, if you could talk, I'd bring you in, but I know you know how to type because I've seen you do it. But building a peninsula, you know, that's a great way to add shoreline and to help get depth that you need for storage capacity. Now, right here, I'll tell you where we are. We're in the little town of Iredell, Texas. Wayne and Josie are building a house, their retirement home, right over here. And we're in an RV, and Josie's been here a little bit longer than she wants. So part of the mission today was to bring Debbie up and to visit with Josie and talk about and talk about some lighting and things like that, which Debbie's really good at. And so we thought we'd talk about the lake, we'd look at the house, and just broadcast from here. So what Wayne did was he created new habitat, and then the flood came. And as a matter of fact, he couldn't even get to his house. There's James Allen. Hello, Jim, from outside of Louisville, Kentucky. Good to see you. This is tap water, by the way. I drink out of the hose. So does Jim Allen. I know Jim Allen. So, hey, Michael Eric, how's everything in Iowa? Good to see you, brother. So anyway, he came back in and created spawning beds and habitat. And just below the surface of this land here is a lot of limestone rock. It's almost yellow colored. And so you don't have to dig down but a couple of feet and you're hitting rock. So he took a bunch of boulders and created rock piles, and the peninsula, added a bunch of brush and some standing timber that they took off the dam and some other areas around the property here. 25-acre tract of land, and now it's full. So here's the catchphrase. If you're not in a drought, you will be. And the only way out of a drought's a flood. Now, they ended up with a 500-year flood. You don't really want that. But who's got control? So what Wayne ended up seeing was the water topped the dam, chewed up the part of the backside slope. So he had to come back in after the fact and fix that backside slope. And did you make your spillway bigger?
No.
So what he did was cleaned out the spillway a little bit and left it the same. So Michael Gray said you can waste a lot of dirt there. Actually, that's absolutely true. And wasting dirt to an earth mover means you don't have to move it twice, or you don't have to move it so far. There's Kenny Sanderson checking in from western Kansas. Jason Dodd, so what happens when the pond dries up again? You lose all the fish you were growing? Well, here's the thing here. This is a region of Texas that gets probably 25 to 27 inches of rain a year. His watershed's big enough to support it. But what he did was he increased the depth. So now he's got more storage capacity than he had before. So part of the mission was increase the depth to diminish the risk of the pond going dry again. So how he mitigates that is getting some of that dirt and do like what Michael's saying right there, is waste a lot of dirt. Well, he wasted dirt by building a peninsula, and actually there's a spot across the lake where he took a bunch of dirt out and just piled it up and flattened it to kind of give it an infinity look. It could almost be a building pad. But he made the pond a lot deeper than it was, so his odds of it going dry have been decreased a lot. But if the pond dries up again, then you lose your fish. But here's the thing. Droughts happen, depending on where you are, every 7 to 10 years maybe. And how good is a fishery? A fishery lasts 7 to 10 years before it begins to decline. And it's a 5-acre lake. I don't think in the next 10 to 15 years that this pond is going to stand a chance to go dry. If it does, then as it goes down, he can harvest a bunch of the fish and put them to good use, like in a skillet. Right? There you go. See, he's all over that. So give me some questions. I don't want to think. Well, I kind of do. Just throw something out there. So going back to that, I tell you something. Here's a big advantage of a drought. When that flood does come and the lake fills back up, you can start over. You can stock brand new fathead minnows, bluegill, red ear sunfish, and to stock this lake, Wayne's probably going to spend $2,500, $2,800, maybe $3,000 at the most. And within 18 months, he's catching fish again. Maybe even faster, because he's going to feed the fish. He's got a Texas hunter feeder. Chris Blood, you listening? I know you are. So, and a little bit of Purina MVP, Aquamax Sport Fish food. Speed the fish growth up, and you're going to get where you want to be quicker. And so, it doesn't take long to take, when a fishery goes away, like during a drought, then, it doesn't take long to replace it. Michael Gray might increase the freeboard too. Actually, he did that. He had to increase the freeboard because a lot of the backside slope got washed away. So they came in and took out there were some trees on the backside slope of this dam that had been there for decades before Wayne and Josie bought this property. So they took those trees out, fixed it, raised the road base up. How much did you raise the road base?
Only about 6 inches.
Okay, they raised it about half a foot, which is better than what it was. So now, but he's also cleaned out that spillway, so there's more free flow of water through it. So that's a good idea, though, Michael. If you see, and of course, how often do you get a 500-year flood? In theory, it's every 500 years, but that's not the reality. I've seen more 500-year floods in the last 8 or 10 years than I probably saw in the last 30 years combined. So even though we might not want to climb aboard the climate change train, I've definitely seen weather pattern shifts. So, I think I know talking to Michael that part of what he's doing now is he's thinking along those lines. So is Mike Otto and the other lake builders that I know. We're looking at making sure there's more freeboard than normal, and we're able to trap more water or to impound more water to release slowly and not worry about the top of the dam being taken over. Let's see here. So Michael Eric says his area of Iowa is in a third year of a severe drought. Yep. You know what? And Texas, everybody goes through that. If you're not in a drought, you're going to be. Tyler Shaka Markley just got in from, let me see here. Oops, it's attempted the drop shot. Got 2 bass and a crappie. Wichita, Kansas. You're still kind of cold there, right? Your temperature is a little bit chilly. But so if you went in drop shot and you got 2 bass and a crappie, that's pretty darn good in Wichita, Kansas right now. Kenny Sanderson, what's the minimum temperature to handle and move bluegill, red ear, sunfish, smallmouth bass, and largemouth bass? Here's my opinion. I don't want to move bass in water cooler than about 50 degrees. If we start moving fish around in water cooler than that, it's stressful. I don't like to move bass or bluegill or red ear or any fish. If the water temperature is in the mid 80s, I'm out. I'd rather wait till the temperature cools. But here's a more in-depth answer to that question. If we start trying to move fish and the water temperature's 50, 52, 53, they're more susceptible. Their metabolism rate has slowed down. So if they're bruised or bumped, which is inevitable when a fish is handled, if we're trying to move those fish and the water temperature is 50, their metabolism rate is so slow that they can't recover their health as quickly, which means if we compromise their slime or they get bumps and bruises, they're not going to heal so fast. And then here's the big problem with that, is that gives a chance for, hey, write this down, saprolegnia, fungus. So if a fish gets covered in fungus, it's a death sentence. So, handling the fish, they get bumped, their slime is compromised, gets knocked off. The next thing that's going to happen is they're going to try to recover from that. And if they can't recover from it quickly because it's cold, then that gives the fungus a chance to adapt and come in and take over that fish. And when that happens, they're not going to come back from that. So, minimum temperature to handle and move bluegill, red ear, sunfish, smallmouth, and largemouth bass. I'm going to tell you I don't like moving them under 55 degrees. Let's see here. I can't ask questions because I wear Kenny Sanderson's phone out. Jason Dodd, Kenny Sanderson and you guys ought to be buddies. Jason hangs out in Wichita, Kansas too. Jason did one of the coolest things. He bought a property with a lake on it with several neighbors that have property that adjoin the lake. So what Jason, and I wrote about this is in an issue of Pond Boss, which is $35 a year, by the way, cheaper than a Friday night date, and it lasts a year. Little commercial there. It's not time, but I'm going to give it to you. You can go to the Pond Boss website and subscribe to Pond Boss. So what Jason did was he started figuring out, oh, look at there, Wayne's gone to the pantry, and look at this. This is the most recent copy of Pond Boss magazine. That's it. Thoroughbreds and bass, an unlikely combination. There's the coolest story. And Jim Allen knows a little bit about this. There's a guy in Louisville, Kentucky, not Louisville, but Lexington, Kentucky, that's got a horse ranch. And he's renovating some lakes, and I've written about it. It's going to be like a 4-part series. So, thanks for that. There we go. We're also talking about leaky ponds. So there's the latest issue of Pond Boss. The next one's queued up and ready to go. So, anyway, talking about Jason Dodd. So Jason figured out that there's carp and overabundant numbers of white crappie and golden shiners, but not nearly as many bass and catfish and things as he'd like. So he was going to buy some fish. He was going to, the fish numbers were off. So he was going to stock some shiners, maybe some fatheads, and some bluegill and some bass. But he started kind of digging in. He found Pond Boss and started emailing and looking at the resource guide and reading some back articles. And then when he emailed me, I called him. And we had a short conversation. And I connected him up with a local biologist who came out and said, you know what, you need to kill all your fish and start over. Smartest thing he could have done. Literally thousands of pounds of gizzard shad, carp, I think a few buffalo, crappie. There were a handful of good fish, but not enough to even count. And now he's gone back in and renovated, got rid of all the bad fish, stocked it, and this next spring they're going to be catching some good fish. So, Kenny Sanderson, you may have some more answers for Jason Dodd, but Jason, dude, I'm proud of that guy. He's on it. Christopher Aguilar, South Louisiana, from South LA. Hey, there's Tom Davis from Ohio. Oh, hey, Christopher, thanks. Hashtag Pond Boss. Yep, here's the deal. Click like. Type in hashtag Pond Boss Magazine. Share this to your timeline, and you'll be eligible for a drawing. I'll remind Leanne we're going to give away a hat. So you guys can handle that. Let's do it. Benjamin Johnson, what should be stocked in a, let me see here. Whoop, it ran away. In a small quarter-acre pond that has stunted bass. Chris Blood says, Texas Hunter feeders can handle the floods too. Absolutely right. Yes, I do. As a matter of fact, Wayne, your feeder got flooded.
Yes, it did.
Wayne's feeder got flooded and it's sitting on a dock. And how much water got in your feeder?
About 3 feet.
So his feeder was inundated, and he got it off the dock, took all the feed, the soaked feed out, pulled the timer, and he needed a new battery. So he ran up to where he went and bought a battery, okay, and he put it in the feeder, and it worked. Everything worked perfect. The timer wasn't ruined. Now, a lot of times, if the timer gets inundated, it's no good. But Texas Hunter's stellar about helping work that out with you. You know, they'll get one out to you the next day. I've even had a few occasions where a feeder was under warranty where they just replace it. But they'll get one to you the next day to keep that feeder going. So, outstanding customer service for great products. What are we going to stock in a small quarter-acre pond that has stunted bass? Well, Benjamin, Mr. Johnson, sir, if you know that you've got stunted bass, one of the things I would do is start culling. Take out every bass you can catch that's in a quarter-acre pond. I'd be surprised if you had more than 40 or 50 bass. Quarter-acre pond's a little bit tough to manage for bass because you're only going to be able to grow 15 or 20 pounds total for that small body of water. Now, what I would be tempted to do is harvest as many bass as you can and come back in with some feed-trained bass. If there's a local hatchery near you that sells bass that are conditioned and trained to eat fish food, do that. And then just feed a really good feed. But a more direct answer to that direct question is cull 15 or 20 bass, stock some adult bluegills, feed the bluegills, and then pay attention to your relative weights of bass. Make sure that your bass are at the length they need to be for the weight. So in other words, weigh and measure some fish and compare them to the standard weight charge. If you do that, look at that chart, then you're going to know what to do. Overkill a spillway. Michael Gray, absolutely. So like over here with Wayne's spillway, it's concrete. So he'd have to take the concrete out to make it any wider. But what he can do, and I think he did you shave down? Okay, so what he did do was he increased his freeboard on the dam. Then he went on the far side and cut his road down a little bit so the water can't come over the dam again. And plus, increasing his depth, he's helped himself a whole lot. So what Michael's saying is right on. If you've got a wider spillway, then your freeboard, the freeboard, that's a term we use to tell that from the height of the dam to where the water level is. You need a minimum of 3 feet. Wayne's got 4 feet. He just had 15 inches of rain in 2 days. Nobody gets that. Let's see here. All right, Jim Allen, you appreciate farmers even more. Yeah, when your pond dries up, yeah. Tyler Markley, definitely cold. High was around 60 degrees today. Yep, guessing water temperature around 40. That's probably right. That's probably pretty close. I bet your water temperatures are close to 40. Bass are small, need to thin them out. Thin them out. Atta boy. Michael Eric, how often do red ear catch to supplementary feeding? I'm going to tell you, out of 1,000 native red ear in a pond, 4 of them will figure out the fish food. That's going to be my guess. Hello, John Henry. Let's see here. Jim Allen, current magazine full of very cool information. Yes, thank you. Yeah, we're working at it, buddy. All right, let's see here. Dan Friend. Hey, boss. Good to see you. How many species can you keep in a 2-acre pond? Spring fed, approximately 7 feet deep. Where are you? What part of the world do you live? I'm going to tell you, a 2-acre pond, depending on where you are, bluegill, another species of sunfish, depending on where you are, either red ear or pumpkin seeds, depends. Smallmouth bass, largemouth bass, rainbow trout in the fall or winter. Just depends. Tell me where you are. Tell me where you are, and I'll answer that question a little bit better. All right, throw me some more questions. Catch up. Let's go. Somebody feed me something. What do we need? I got to go here. There's a charcuterie board over there. I'm tempted. So, Wisconsin. Oh, you live in Wisconsin. Okay. In a 2-acre pond, if you've got any depth, you could stock some walleye in that thing. Smallmouth bass, walleye, that would be your 2 top-end predators along with pumpkin seeds. Bluegill, I don't know about that. I'd be tempted to not do bluegills. I don't think you're allowed to feed the fish in Wisconsin. Some areas of the country, they don't want you to feed fish, which I kind of get it, but then again, I don't. So I don't want to dance around that a little bit, but pumpkin seeds, fathead minnows, probably some golden shiners, or there's a species of shiners native to Wisconsin. I can't think of the name of them right now. Somebody on here, they'll know. They'll chime in here. Hello, Deborah Corlew. Good to see you, dear. It's been a while. Good to see you. Hope everybody's good. And I would, in Wisconsin, I think I would not stock bluegills. Because here's why. Bluegills are going to spawn in Wisconsin, depending on what part of the state, typically around the 1st of July, grow really, really fast, and then top out just before winter, which is the 2nd or 3rd week of September. That's when their growth rate, that's when they slow down. So I think pumpkin seeds, species of minnows, walleye, and smallmouth bass. Now, here's a real important part. You've got to have, and I preach these 5 topics, and I know some of you guys are new, so I'm going to throw them out there for you. First thing that's most important is happy water. If your water's not happy and healthy, none of these other things I'm going to tell you matter. And there's areas of Wisconsin where your water's acidic. You know, there's a lot of peat. Depending on what the springs flow through, if you've got a lot of organic buildup where the spring water flows through it, you feed 50 pounds a week. Man, that's a lot. What are you feeding? Tell me the fish. Yellow perch, that's a good one. Yellow perch will eat that fish food. Hello, Justin. So, happy water is the first thing. The next thing that's important, second in line, is habitat. As goes the habitat, so goes what lives in it. That's my little catchphrase for that. If you got the right habitat for bass, for smallmouth bass, they're going to reproduce. They're going to thrive. They're going to grow really, really well. Oh my gosh, Josie just brought a plate of something. Check this out. Yeah, be jealous. Jelly. And so, be sure that you study the right kind of habitat for the kind of fish that you're trying to grow. That's a big deal. The third thing is the food chain. Hello, Chris Chavetta. Hey, Debbie, look at Chris Chavetta.
Hey.
Debbie said, hey. And so, Chris is near St. Louis. Oh, there's Ann, too. Ann's hanging out with Chris. Ann says, hey.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm there.
Yeah.
Takes a little while for dinner.
Debbie says howdy. So, happy water, habitat, food chain. You got to have the right food chain. It takes about 10 pounds of bait fish for a game fish to gain a pound, but it takes 10 pounds of food for the bait fish to gain a pound. So you got to have the right food chain, top to bottom. And, you know, Chris understands that. He gets it. And Aquamax 500. Buddy, what kind of fish are you feeding? That's great feed. So it sounds to me like you're feeding either yellow perch or bluegills or something like that. So that's the right food for that. The fourth thing is the right genetics. You want to have the right genetics suited for your area. You don't want Florida bass in Wisconsin, just like we probably don't want Wisconsin smallmouth bass stocked in Arkansas. And pay attention to that. Then the fifth piece of the puzzle is a good harvest plan. Look at a pond like a garden. You're going to plant it, nurture it, feed it. At some point, you got to harvest something, because if you don't, nature will do that for you. I was roaming around out here with Wayne today, and I saw where there was a little elm tree that was laying on its ground, looked like it had been sharpened like a pencil. Beavers. They've got beavers. I said, dude, that looks like beaver damage over there. He said, oh yeah, we got beavers. The neighbor loves them. But the beavers already ate all the neighbor's trees, and now they're coming over the dam from the pond downstream and eating Wayne and Josie's trees. What kind of tree did that beaver girdle? An oak tree or something? So young beavers will girdle hardwood trees. So they got the food chain. So they kind of got to disrupt that food chain and disrupt what's eating it. Gravel sand bottom, 30% weed cover. Dan says water flows good and goes out to the creek. Also do supplemental minnows stocked in the fall and spring. Have largemouth bass up to 22 inches and 6 pounds. Well, I'm going to tell you this, Dan. If you got bass 22 inches and 6 pounds in Wisconsin, you're doing good. You're doing good. You really are. Bluegills you're feeding, pumpkin seed, red ear, and perch. There you go. Okay, that makes totally good sense to me. As long as you're feeding those fish, they're probably going to thrive. That combination you got is going to work. Hello, Jason Foley. Hall of Famer. Didn't see that coming. If you guys got to watch the show last week, Tom Lang announced that I had been elected into the Texas Freshwater Fishing Hall of Fame. And when I first heard about that they might nominate me, that doesn't make any sense. Why would you nominate a fisheries biologist into a fishing Hall of Fame? Well, they set me straight. They said, Bob, you've been working with people for decades, and you're helping people take ponds, stock ponds, farm ponds, whatever, and make them into pretty good fishing ponds. And how many kids caught their first fish in a pond? So I'm going to ask you that. How many of you caught your first fish in a pond? So it kind of started making sense, but it's at the same time, it's kind of an awesome thing. There's 38 people in that Hall of Fame that started in 1997. So I'm still kind of wrapping my brain around it and absorbing it. And they're going to induct me in October. So I guess I got a few months to kind of think about it. So thank you very much for that, Jason. Okay, Jason Dodd says, speaking of happy water and a new pond, how many years does it take for the pond to stop having huge swings of filamentous algae, chara, pondweed, and other growth? You can't judge that by time. You judge that by how much nutrient load is in that pond that can be converted to something besides plants. Okay, soak that in for a minute. When that nutrient load, okay, here's the thing. Nature is not going to allow nutrients to be unused. Now, here's what happened with Jason's pond there near Wichita, Kansas. That pond was muddy. That doesn't mean it didn't have any nutrients. What it meant was that sunlight couldn't do what sunlight does to fuel the growth from the nutrients. So think about thousands of pounds of carp and shad that are bottom feeders. Gizzard shad are bottom feeders, so are carp. That are continually recycling those nutrients, eating things, and pooping those nutrients back out either into the water column or into the bottom of the pond. So when you guys renovated that pond and took out all those fish, that freed up those nutrients that were no longer being eaten by fish and recycled, made them available. The water clarity increased because the muddiness went away because the carp and shad were stirring the water up. Now the water's clear and those nutrients were converted into plants. So here's the bottom line answer. Until those nutrients are extracted from the water, they're going to grow plants. So you need something to eat the plants. So, like in Texas, I don't know what your laws are. Well, actually, in Kansas, you know what? You can have tilapia. Tilapia will eat filamentous algae. So, if you can get some tilapia, the baby tilapia are pretty efficient at eating filamentous algae. So, what happens then is they take that algae and they convert it to flesh. Then, when the water temperature starts to cool in the fall, they get sluggish, and the bigger fish can eat them. That takes the nutrients out and converts it to meat, converts it to flesh. So that's one way to do it. Excess phosphorus, Justin Ludwig's exactly right. So another way is to bind the phosphorus. You can bind the phosphorus with, there's several products out there. It's escaping me. This is why I like to do this. It helps keep my mind fresh. Foslock. That's the one I'm thinking about. Look up Foslock. Foslock is one of the go-tos to help sequester phosphorus. I like that idea, but all it does is it binds with it and puts it down on the bottom of the pond just to lay there. Where what happens with plant growth is the fish will actually eat it and convert it to flesh, and then fish eat fish. It's a fish eat fish world. There you go. All right. Essop, which is Scott Schilling on the Pond Boss Farm. He loves optimal fish foods, easy to get shipped to your door. And you know what? And I know that, and I'm a big fan of Purina Mills. And you can buy that from your local Purina dealer. Those are both good fish foods. Kevin Briggs, good to see you, buddy. North Carolina, as I recall. I am doing very well. When people ask me how I'm doing, I always tell them I'm still leading a pretty cool life. And I actually am. Harbor Fish Farm in Anthony. Yep, Harbor's got 2 locations. They got one in Oklahoma and one in Wichita. Kenny Sanderson's talking about alum. Alum is one of the things, and Foslock plus a buffer. The reason you got to have a buffer is so that you don't send your pH of your water plummeting. There you go. There's some answers. Pond Boss Magazine. Hey, $35 a year, folks. Cheaper than a Friday night date, and it lasts a year. In fact, Jim Allen said earlier, a lot of good stuff in it. This issue, it was pretty funny. I can remember a lot of ponds I look at, but for the life of me, I don't remember much of what I write. I don't remember anything of what anybody else would write, so I got to go look at it. So in this issue, table of contents, Dan Van Skyke wrote about wild turkeys, which I love the way that guy talks. You guys have been in the wildlife business. Well, maybe not as long as Jesus has been around, but he's been there a long time. The fish professor. One of the things I love about this magazine is when some of the writers submit their work. It's amazing to me how in some issues they're just parallel. Like Michael Gray sent a story about leaky ponds. Guess what Otto wrote about leaky ponds? But they come at it from 2 totally different angles. Let's see, aquatic invertebrates. You know what? There's a great article in here by Dr. Wes Neal about the different species of bass. You know, guys that were trained like me, there's only like 3 or 4 species of bass. That's not the case. There's more than that. And they finally have gotten to the point where genetic analysis is so sophisticated that they can actually figure it out. They're finding differences in different regions of the nation where the genetics are really different. And they still haven't even named some of those different species. All right, so we're in the middle of February. Hope you planned out your Valentine's Day. Let me tell how much I planned out my Valentine's Day. I said, Debbie, what are we doing on Valentine's Day? And she said, we're going to go on a date. And I said, okay, what are we going to do? So we're going to go somewhere, aren't we?
The next time that I ask
we're going to the jewelry store.
Oh, we're going to the jewelry store next time.
You're going with Wayne Lancaster.
Wayne, you and I are busted. Okay, so Chris Chavetta, what do you think about floating plant mats to use up extra nutrients? Are they as effective as plants are on the lake edge? No, they're not. The floating lake plants, I like the floating islands, like Floating Island International. You guys look that up. It's pretty interesting. Bruce Kanya from up in Shepherd, Montana. He's the nation's leader about floating islands, artificial floating islands. And he's come up with some really good stuff. I think that there's let me think about it. There's a professor in South Carolina. I think she's based in Clemson. That's doing some really solid work on the amount of phosphorus and nitrogen that can be sequestered through rooted plants in floating islands, and it's less than you think. Part of the problem is not the fact that the plants can take it up; it's the point source. Where's it coming from? Like up there where Bruce lives near Shepherd, Montana, east of Billings. The problem is that they have a lot of corn farmers up there, and the soil is real porous. As a matter of fact, it's gravelly. You don't get very far under the surface of some of that land, and it's almost like pea gravel deposited eons ago by riverbeds. And so what Bruce found is that with the corn farmers up there, they tend to over-fertilize their corn because they know that their corn's not going to get all the fertilizer, and it winds up being dissolved into the water, migrating down through the soils, coming out as springs, through creeks, and ends up back up in the Yellowstone River. And then it eventually ends up and makes a dead spot down in the Gulf of Mexico. So, Carrie Cooper Wood, my high school friend, she said, Carrie says, send Debbie to Austin. I've got a jeweler here who can make anything, and his work is simply stunning. Got to help a gal out. You know what, Carrie? I'm going to take you up on that because Debbie's mentioned more than once that she wants to upgrade her wedding ring from that sparkling diamond that she's got.
Whatever.
Oh, she just rolled her eyes. And make it better. So, thanks. We'll be in touch. I promise we will be in touch. We'll figure out her ring. I said it publicly. And I have witnesses. And going back to the floating plant mats, they will take up some, but it's something like 6 pounds of phosphorus per ton of plants. That's a lot. So when you start looking at that math, you got to grow a whole bunch of plants to suck up that much that much phosphorus out of the water. Jim Allen says, bring her to Turby in Louisville. Oh, bring her to the. Hey, you want to go to the?
Hell yeah.
Okay, she said she's willing to take a jet and go to the Derby as long as somebody's got a jet and tickets.
Whatever.
I read that somewhere. I don't know. All right, we're having fun. So let's talk a little bit more about it here. So throw me some more questions. I'm really, really counting on you guys to keep this show going. Hey, there's Howard Dietrich over there. I don't know where he's hanging out, but he's from Iowa and Florida and I think California, and he's got a beautiful motor home and a great place in the Panhandle of Florida. Bucket mouths need big enough bluegills. Little forage fish won't make a bucket mouthful. He's right. So, Dr. Dietrich, good to see you, pal. Hadn't talked to you in a while. So, where he's going is where Dr. Dietrich lives. Howard is in Florida, and one of his life's missions is to grow some really big largemouth bass. And he's in the area where I think it's mostly gravel pits and sand pits, but I know there's some natural phosphorus in the dirt over there in Florida. And so what he's trying to do is grow some really big bass. In order to do that, big bass have big meals. Y'all need to take that to the bank. Big bass eat big meals. They're not going to run around chasing 3-inch bluegills. They're going to chase 6, 7, 8-inch bluegills. Debbie, honey, Carrie says Khaleesi designs jewelers on South Lamar. Steve is the owner. She knows him. She loves him. Oh, wait, no. She loves the things he's made for her. He's working on a custom piece for her husband, Philip. Thank you. Yep, miss you too. Yep. Well, you know what? I appreciate that. I've taken off some time, but I'm fired up to keep doing this. So you guys bring some more questions. Let me think a minute. Let me ask myself a question. What would it be? How long does it take? Oh, I got it. How long does it take for a bass to gain 10 pounds? If you got the right stuff, 6 years. 6 years. Sometimes it takes 8. And last week I was talking to Tom Lang on this show, and he's found that some of the 13-year-old bass are typically 10 years old in that Cheryl Unker program. So there we go. Just added 30 acres of phosphate pits. A 10-6. Dude, you caught a 10-6 last week. How many of you caught a double-digit bass last week? Oh, there's one hand going up. Howard Dittrich, right there, Florida. So I know where he is now. He's in Florida. Kenny Sanderson, about 3,500 saw guy, stocked out in the Wichita area in 2023. Hope folks get a chance to see what this hybrid can do. Okay, let's talk about saw guys. A saw guy, for those of us that don't know, is a cross between a sauger and a walleye. And one of the attractions about those things is that they have hybrid vigor, they're aggressive, they'll get bigger than either parent, and they're pretty fun to catch. Thanks, Carrie. Appreciate it. Adios. So, Kenny, when you stocked those saw guy, did you put them in public lakes? Because I know you're in the private fisheries. So you guys check out Kenny Sanderson. Kenny he's an amazing guy. He's got a full-time job, but his full-time life is messing with fish. So he's built himself a hatchery. He has volunteered his time with the state of Kansas to help spawn walleye over the years, and he's got that down. I mean, he's good as anybody that does it for a living. So you guys check out Kenny, because especially if you're in the Kansas area, the western Kansas, southern Nebraska, North Texas, Panhandle of Oklahoma over there, southeastern Colorado. If you're looking for smallmouth bass and other fish to stock, Kenny really could be your guy, because he's positioning himself to be one of the best producers, and then figure out how to bring it to scale so that he can have some fish that you guys can buy at a fair price. How's that for a plug? Jim Allen, I think about folks bringing water mites into our waters in Kentucky. Is that even likely? Well, maybe. I'll tell you this. If water mites make it into Kentucky, if they're not already there, it won't be in a bilge. It won't be in a live well. Most likely would be transferred by another vector, which could be birds. The thing about water mites is you've heard of swimmer's itch. That's what he's talking about, is water mites called swimmer's itch. You see that in some of the northern tier states and some of the midwestern states.
Minnesota.
Minnesota, actually, Wisconsin, Minnesota, the Dakotas, in that area, upper Midwest, and northern tier states. Spiny water fleas made it into the Great Lakes. They're a nuisance. They displace a lot of the native insects. So, one of the things about water mites is they don't have anything that is their food chain. Where in Kentucky, you do. You've got gambusias, you've got other species of insects, water boatmen, you've got back swimmers. That kind of stuff eat water mites. So, look at all the stuff you're getting today. How did I even know that stuff? Where'd it come from? I don't know. Sewanee and Hamilton counties, 15 miles from Bienville. Anybody ever fish there? Well, we're going to strike up a conversation. Uh-oh, I just did something. Let me figure out what I'm doing here. Kenny has great information on the Pond Moss Forum. That's absolutely true. He sure does. And now I'm hitting the wrong buttons. Chris Blood. Looky there. Oh, hey, look at this. Big bass eat bluegill that can't get back inside a Texas angler pyramid. Fish pyramid. Okay, so Texas hunters got an outstanding line of fish habitat, fish attractors, fish structure. So there's the link for it, so you guys can go take that out. So Kenny Sanderson's stocking private ponds. I was hoping you'd say that. Ludwig, biggest bass I caught, 7. And you know what? I would be talking about a 7.5 pound bass too. You know, Mark McDonald wrote a little piece about the Texas Freshwater Fishing Hall of Fame, and I loved his comment. He said that you put a fishing rod in my hand and I could stop a salmon run. He's right. I guarantee you everybody right here can outfish me, but you're going to struggle to beat me raising the fish that you catch. But I've never caught a bass bigger than about 6.5 pounds myself, maybe 7. But I've held hundreds of double-digit bass. I just catch them with electricity, and you don't. Oh, there's Tim Stewart. All right, let's see here. John Henry. How many times will green sunfish spawn in an Arkansas pond? Depends on how many times you call them cuz. And I know you're the only one laughing, but you get it. I'm going to tell you, in an Arkansas pond, green sunfish are going to spawn once. And then if they get driven off those beds the first time, they'll spawn twice. But it'll be in cycles of the full moon. So green sunfish are going to typically spawn one time and be done. And they spawn between the time that bluegill and red ears spawn. So it's kind of a pretty cool way that nature does that. Nature has all these different sunfish spawning at slightly different temperatures, slightly different phases of the moon. And that's how they keep their species separate. So I'm going to tell you once, and on a rare occasion, twice. Now the guys at the fish hatchery might tell you something different because they're in it every day, every year. Let's see here. Anybody start tilapia for filamentous algae? I do. I just don't know if they're legal in Florida. I have a hard time keeping up with all the laws everywhere, guys. So I really don't know. Chris Froggelard, should I drop a bunch of treetops in the pond before I add the bluegill? Are there any bass in there? If there are, here's the deal. It goes back to that big 5. Happy water, habitat. Let's stop at habitat. If you want survival rates of your newly stocked bluegill in a new pond to be higher, you need to have places where they can hide, loaf, congregate, feed, and grow. Now, if you don't have any predator fish in there yet, then it's less important to have that. But if you've got predator fish in there, and in South Louisiana, Boudin man, then you're going to want to have something where bluegill can escape being eaten. So that's part of that habitat plan. Here's the way to look at habitat. You want habitat where basically habitat is an underwater community where fish can be able to reproduce, where the young can have good survival rates, so they can hide, loaf, congregate, and not be eaten too fast. Here's a little tidbit. This is a cool little fact. When a baby bluegill is first hatched, 12,000 of them weigh 1 pound. I didn't do that count, but some graduate students somewhere at some university did. Now, if you can keep them alive for 45 days, they weigh 30 per pound. So I'm going back to that little analogy about it takes 10 pounds of bait fish for a game fish to gain 1 pound. If you can keep enough of those bluegill alive for 45 days, they go from being a little Tootsie Roll Pop to a nugget. And if you can do that, then that's the reason to have that kind of habitat there. So let's see here. Here's some more stuff coming in. Sweet. Dave Weber from northeastern Kansas. Northeast of Kansas City. Remind me of the town where you grew up, Wayne?
Excelsior Springs.
Say it again.
Excelsior Springs.
Excelsior Springs there, Dave Weber. Wayne Lancaster grew up in Excelsior Springs, not too far from you. Good evening, Mr. Boss. Nice to know we're both still here. Yep, we're both still here. Yeah, Tuesday night's going to be the new date, and I'll tell you why. My bride goes to a Bible study every Wednesday. And a few months ago, she says, okay, Pond Boss, Lusk, Bob, I want you to go to Bible study. So those are on Wednesday, so I'm going to Bible study with her pretty much every Wednesday. So Tuesday is going to be our new day. Tim Stewart, tilapia bully the other fish. Compete for space for small and mid-sized bass. Now, Tim, people got to know that you live near Lake Okeechobee. So what you're saying is absolutely true, especially in Okeechobee. But they don't act the same way in Wichita, Kansas. They act a little different in Wichita, Kansas, or Northwest Missouri, where they're not legal. All right, y'all, throw me some more questions out here. Anybody got any in the crowd? I'm scanning the crowd to see if there's any questions. They're all looking at me like I'm looking at you. I'm going to scroll back up and see if I missed anything. Hey, Howard, going back to the tilapia question, since you're in the panhandle of tilapia, let me tell you this. Here's what about tilapia. I don't like stocking them south of a line that runs through Waco, Texas, probably Natchitoches, Louisiana, central Mississippi, through south central Alabama, and even over almost to the Georgia-Florida line. I don't like stocking them there because the odds of them making it through the winter are higher. Like where Tim is down in South Florida, they're not going to die. He's going to have a really harsh Arctic something that kills oranges before it kills tilapia. You know, so I'm not a big fan of stocking them where they don't die in the wintertime. You want them to die because you don't want to create a brand new problem. Katie Burke. Okay. Oh, look at there. Katie, I'm going to get to yours. Let's see here. Katie, what would you say would be the most interesting aspect of sunfish spawning? Katie works for the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department. And I'll tell you this, Katie. I think the most interesting aspect of sunfish spawning is how nature allows the different sunfish, the different species, to spawn independently, even though a lot of them use the same beds. Like red ear sunfish will use the same beds as bluegills. But they do it at different times, at slightly different temperatures, slightly different photo periods maybe, but mostly slightly different phases of the moon. That's one of the most interesting things to me. The other interesting thing to me is a sunfish, when it sits on a nest, like a bluegill sits on a crater a little bigger than the hoof print of a cow. So when it's guarding that nest, it can make itself look 3 times as big to an intruder as it really is, because it'll take its gills and flare them out. When it flares its gills out, it makes it look like it's 3 times as wide as it really is, and they're fierce. They're fierce when it comes to protecting that nest. You know, if a big fish or a turtle comes in, they're going to go bump it, chase it, and try to get rid of it. So that's the 2 things I love most about aspects of sunfish spawning. Jeff Miller, the best way to control Cara. You're going to be surprised at my answer about the best way to control Cara. Don't. Now, let me justify that a little bit. To me, Cara, it only manifests itself at the surface when the surface comes to the Cara. So Cara is an algae, but it typically grows maybe 6 or 8 inches thick on the bottom of the pond. And my experience has been, oftentimes when you take the Cara out, you kill it with it's an algae, so you'd use an algicide to kill it if that's what you want to do. But it's often replaced by something we like less, like filamentous algae or Eurasian water milfoil or something else. As long as there's a nutrient load, food to feed it, and the water temperature's right, and there's sunlight, something's going to grow. So when you take out that mat of Cara, it's going to open up sunlight penetration to the bottom, something else is going to grow. So I'm a big fan of thinking that through before you take it out. I don't like to just say, let's go take out the Cara. But the direct answer to your question is going to be an algicide. KT, Q-Trine, typically one of the copper-based algicides. Will tilapia survive in a 3-acre pond in Northern California? No, they won't. Now, they'll survive as long as the water temperature is above 52 degrees. So now what I don't know is what the laws are in in California. You need to ask somebody that. But they will, in Northern California, with your climate, tilapia are going to die. They're a semi-tropical fish, and when your water temperature gets down in the low 50s, depending on the species, There's 2 species you can use in various parts of the nation, but in Northern California, they're going to die in the winter. Tim Stewart, nobody wants their bass pond full of 5-pound tilapia. I've seen that happen, especially where you are. Let's see. Jason Dodd, the pond has been under 60 degrees for 4 months now. Why do I have hundreds of thousands of baby minnows in the pond? They look like fresh spawn. Well, Jason, it's because they're not fresh spawn. And when the numbers are so high, their growth rates are stymied. Which that is great news, because when your water temperature starts to go up, your predator fish are going to wear them out, and you're going to see some of the fastest bass growth rates that you'll ever see. Here's my answer to that. What do you think about that? Okay, Dr. Dittrich had a conversation with the 4DNR who mentioned that they may have jurisdiction over private water if it's fishable. I told her it ain't fishable if there's no trespassing. You know, it's, I'm going to be delicate. No, I'm not. The laws are the same year in and year out. They're interpreted based on who lives in the White House and who they appoint to interpret those rules. That was pretty delicate. Recessive genes. I'm already lost. I know. Okay, Wayne Giannani. I have 2 alkalinity test kits. One is a HANA that measures ppm. The other is MGL. Which is the best? They're the same. Parts per million is the same as milligrams per liter. So it's the very same. So when you do your alkalinity test and it says, and your alkalinity measure is 100 milligrams per liter, it's the same as 100 parts per million. It's totally, both are good. Lori, you're welcome. Well, hey, we've been going this almost an hour, and good gosh, it's so much fun to hang out with you guys. I appreciate you watching. So I think I'm going to wrap it up and call it a day. And remember, Palm Oz Magazine, $35 a year, cheaper than a Friday night date. It'll last a year. So hey, once again, I really appreciate you hanging out, and we'll do this again next Tuesday. I don't know where I'm going to be. That's one of the fun things about my life is I never know. I didn't know I was going to be here till yesterday. So here we are. So I appreciate everybody watching. So until next Tuesday, adios.
Bam. Done.
Well, adios. Well done.
Yes.
And I do have a question. So, do we have to change the diet of our fish during, like, certain times of the year?
No, because basically what you're doing